Can't legislate love, but we can name hate. Can't fix what you won't face at the gate. So we name it wars, tariffs, ice, wage gap, prison pipe, call each idol down and flip the light. This ain't about fame, it's about food. Not platforms, but power in the hands they exclude.
We won't stop till the whole county rise. We won't stop till the whole county rise. We won't stop till the whole county rise. This is our work until all thrive.
Can't legislate love, but we can name hate. Can't fix what you won't face at the gate. So we name it wars, tariffs, ice, wage gap, prison pipe, call each idol down and flip the light. This ain't about fame, it's about food. Not platforms, but power in the hands they exclude.
We won't stop till the whole county rise. We won't stop till the whole county rise. We won't stop till the whole county rise. This is our work until all thrive. Until all thrive. This is our work until all thrive. Until all thrive. This is our work until all thrive.
Can't legislate love, but we can name hate. Can't fix what you won't face at the gate. So we name it wars, tariffs, ice, wage gap, prison pipe, call each idol down and flip the light. This ain't about fame, it's about food. Not platforms, but power in the hands they exclude.
We won't stop till the whole county rise. We won't stop till the whole county rise. We won't stop till the whole county rise. This is our work until all thrive. Until all thrive. This is our work until all thrive.
Well, happy Monday, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. Monday, September 30th, year of our Lord 2025. I am your host. I'm James Gailliard. I'm senior pastor of Word Tabernacle Church in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. I am a candidate for the North Carolina State Senate. I'm a former state legislator, having served 4 years, 2 terms in North Carolina General Assembly representing House District 25. And welcome to Until All Thrives. Until All Thrive is generally a weekly show where I deal in 3 primary areas: faith, of course, and then public policy and leadership. Those are the intersectional spaces that we work at. And normally on the last Monday of every month, normally I am doing sort of a leadership masterclass for the hour. But today I'm going to just grab some trending topics, some things that are trending, and I want to address each of them from a faith lens, from a public policy lens, and from a leadership lens, okay? So if you are just tuning in, go ahead and share this on YouTube, share this on Facebook. I'm going to be asking a lot of questions today as well. And so in the midst of asking questions, I'm excited for you to go ahead and respond. Hope you will do that. And we'll just have a good conversation today. You know, I'm probably going, can I ask the first question? How would you like a call-in opportunity? If I added the technology to be able to take your calls, would you call in? Would you participate in the show? I'm curious to know if that's something you would do. And so please let me know. By all means, let me know that. So I want to talk about some trending things on the show. And some of this is because you've asked me to do it, okay? Because again, I was going to kind of do leadership piece. I'm going to talk about the North Carolina crime bill and what's going on with that, why the governor hasn't signed it, what we really should be thinking about relative to this Irina's law. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Then I want to talk about the possibility of this federal government shutdown, the implications over healthcare, and kind of what's really happening with that. Then I want to cover the Rocky Mount financial crisis. Not in a critical way, just more in an informative way. Again, I think I would lose credibility on my show if I just didn't deal with things that were relevant in our community, especially. I'm running in Senate District 11, and Nash County is one of those areas, and Rocky Mount is a big portion of Rocky Mount is in Nash County. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I may get to, there was there was a Michigan church shooting. I want to talk a little bit about that today. And then kind of an integrated analysis. Maybe we'll get into Trump's military deployment to U.S. cities. Not really sure. You know, for those of you that are new, the reason I do this show is because I really think we need to be better informed. We're really not informed about things. I want us to become consumers in a positive way. I used to shop at a store up north. As a matter of fact, they had them in Virginia. They're now no longer in existence. It was a clothing store called Sims. They had the most phenomenal stuff. I mean, you name it, they had everything. You know, men, women, children, everything from suits, dresses, shoes, quality stuff. And their motto, their tagline was, "An educated consumer is our best customer." And their point was, we know you think this stuff may be a little expensive, but if you know what you're looking at, that's what we want. We want educated consumers. I think that part of our problem historically is that we're consumers, but we're not educated consumers. And as a result of our consumption, money goes into communities that hurt us. Money is steered away from our community. When it comes to the consumerism of American politics, both locally and nationally, even statewide, we're really not knowledgeable like we need to be. So the first reason I did the show is because I wanted us knowledgeable about political things. And also, it fundamentally doesn't make sense to me that the things that impact our life the most we talk the least about. And so I like to talk about the politics, and I like to talk about faith, because those are the things that really, really impact our lives significantly. So that's why I do the show. Let's jump on in and let's talk a little bit about, I did 2 videos today about this, so you're going to probably see videos come out from me if the party runs them. If not, then I'm going to run them directly, because things just need to be said. And so let me give you background. You probably remember this, but there was a Ukrainian refugee, Irina Zrutska, who was fatally stabbed on Charlotte's light rail system. And as a result of that, the General Assembly, and let me just say this. First of all, we do need some legislation as it relates to public safety, okay? I'm not in denial about that at all. But what I want you to know is that oftentimes those in public office, elected office, are opportunists. So they're jumping at the opportunity to make much of the death of this Ukrainian refugee. And so as a result of that, the Republican Party crafts language and pass a bill. And the problem is, embedded within legislation, they ran an amendment. So you'll have a relatively clean bill that makes sense in terms of the things that it does, right? And, you know, stricter penalties, harsher sentences, those kinds of things. Well, what they'll do is they'll oftentimes insert some very controversial language in the bill. They do that so that they can argue. It's called a run-on concept. So they do that so that they can run their next election on how you voted or how you didn't vote, okay? So what the Republicans did was they capitalized on this Ukrainian refugee's death in Charlotte and manipulated the situation to introduce a crime bill that, in essence, the governor's going to have a hard time signing. And because what they did was they inserted language around bringing back the electric chair, bringing back firing squads for execution. Can you imagine to bring back firing squads, the electric chair, to bring back hanging, right? We've not executed, there's not been a state execution of someone in North Carolina since 2006. And here's my rub on this. And again, what I want to do is I want to give you kind of the policy side, and then I want to talk about the faith side, and then I want to talk about the leadership side of each of these issues. And so oftentimes bills that we see are going to be politically expedient. So if you notice, there's a lot of language around public safety. This is a mantle that the Republican Party has chosen to pick up. The issue becomes a lot of times these expedient political bills wind up procedurally flawed. So, when you get this language added to the bill, so it looks like in one regard we're being tough on crime, but then we're not addressing the root causes of crime. And so here's where I struggle with this from a faith side. Because on the surface, people are like, well, okay, if you commit a crime, and it's a heinous crime, a murder like this gentleman did, we should kill you as the state. That's what the bill is saying. Here's where I have my problem. We know he has documented mental health issues. So, not to excuse his crime, but we recognize one of the root causes for the crime. And one of the root causes of the crime was mental health. The challenge is when you have a person that has a mental health crisis that has been diagnosed but not treated, and they wind up doing something tragic as a result of that diagnosis, and we wind up killing them, then what we have communicated as a society is that having a mental health diagnosis is criminal. And just like in whether it's a physical diagnosis, an emotional diagnosis, it should not be a crime to be schizophrenic. It shouldn't be a crime to be depressed. So what the bill does, in essence, because it doesn't provide any relief, any root causes around further investment in mental health or anything like that. It's just simply creating an illusion that the Republican Party is hard on crime, and Democratic Party is soft on crime. I have a faith concern with this. And what I would say to Republicans in my community that are Christian, I'm talking to Christians now. What I'm going to say to Republicans that are Christian in my community, in Senate District 11, in the North Carolina General Assembly, what I would say to you is, how do you reconcile the death penalty to Romans 12, where God says vengeance belongs to the Lord? It does not belong to the state with medieval methods, right? God says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Vengeance does not belong to the state of North Carolina, and vengeance does not belong to the Republican Party. So I'm wondering, the Christians that are in the General Assembly and the Christians in our community, like in the Nash County Republican Party and the state of North Carolina Republican Party, how do you reconcile the words of Scripture to this particular amendment that institutes the death penalty in barbaric ways? How do you justify that when here's the contradiction? I talked about contradiction on a previous show. The same people that will vote in favor of these new methods to be put back on the books, firing squad, electric chair, hanging, the same people that will approve this, that will agree with this, are the same people who read the New Testament. If they're the same people that read the New Testament, then half of what they're reading is written by who? The Apostle Paul. What was Paul before he wrote the New Testament? He was a murderer. He was a murderer. So the issue I have is, make up in your mind. Do you believe in redemption or don't you believe in redemption? Because according to your theory, God should have had a capital punishment imposed upon Saul. Instead, God redemptively saves him in Jesus on the Damascus Road and turns his life around. Have you never seen a person who winds up in prison and then turns their life around? Do you mean to tell me you've not seen any level of redemption in our prison system? And so my concern from a faith lens is that it doesn't line up with what we know in Jesus. A, it doesn't line up with Romans that vengeance does not belong to us. And B, we totally strip redemption away from God. We're saying, God, we don't believe you can redeem everybody. We don't believe people get another chance. We don't believe that it's not our job to kill, that life and death are not in our hands. It is in the hands of a holy God. It's ironic that life and death are in our hands when it comes to a baby in a womb, but life and death suddenly is in the hands of the state when it becomes a person with a mental health crisis. I think there's a fundamental, I would say to you, if you are Republicans in favor of this amendment, what Bible are you reading and how can you justify that scripturally? I just don't see any possible way. Listen to how someone describes an electrocution. A prisoner literally catches on fire and cooks from the inside, jolting a conscious person multiple times. Y'all, let me tell you something. That's not justice. That's torture. It's medieval. It's barbaric. And so I have a struggle with this, okay? Let me say what this, so we're talking, for those of you just tuning in, I'm James Gailliard. This is Until All Thrive. I'm talking about Irina's Law, the North Carolina crime bill that it's been passed already, both chambers, on the governor's desk. I'm talking about my fundamental concerns with it from a political policy perspective and also from a faith lens. But because it is the last Monday of the month, I also like to add leadership discussion to this. Let me tell you what I think true leadership is. True leadership requires moral courage and not political calculation. This is not real leadership. Real leadership is not how do we capitalize and manipulate an unfortunate death of a person, and how do we leverage it. Let me tell you what the kind of political manipulation. One of the representatives, Representative David Willis, this is what he literally had to say about this. He says it gives death row inmates, listen to this, it gives death row inmates the choice of their execution method. Wait a minute. You're putting in the hand, listen to, you can't make this stuff up, y'all. You are putting choice in the hand of somebody. Wait a minute. So a person who kills a person gets choice, but a person that has never hurt a human being doesn't get choice. Do you see the political calculus of this? That is not true leadership. It sounds as if somehow state-sanctioned brutality is supposed to be palatable, and it's not. So I really struggle with this poor leadership that we see, because leaders should really elevate public discourse. We should not pander to people's worst impulses. And so where the Republican leadership is willing to say, this is not who we are, leadership isn't about following the crowd. It's about calling people to be better people. And, it's interesting to me how many times I've heard lately Republicans say this is not who we are. It's exactly who we are. We kill people in this country. We shoot up churches in this country. We stab innocent people on a subway in this country because a culture of anger, a culture of depression, a culture of hatred has been created because we don't have an environment and a mechanism for people to have access to health care. So I struggle with, this is not who we are. This is exactly who we are. So that's my lens on the bill. If I were in the General Assembly, if you were wondering what would I do, if I were in the General Assembly, I would not vote for a bill, an amendment to a bill that would have these kinds of features in it, especially given the large percentage of people on death row that are African American, and especially considering the number of people on death row that get exonerated, meaning they are later found out to be innocent. They're found out later to be innocent because now we have more sophisticated mechanisms to research things. DNA is much more sophisticated. We have different ways to learn information that sometimes people did not have when they were initially incarcerated. And so what say you out there? And I'm going to check your comments later on tonight, but what do you say? Are you in agreement? If you were in the North Carolina General Assembly, and I'm going to bring some survey technology to the show in the next probably the next month. We've been piloting it at the church, and now I'm ready to bring it to the show. If you were in the North Carolina, if you were the governor of the state of North Carolina, would you sign a crime bill into law that added a section to bring back the electric chair, firing squad, and hanging as mechanisms for capital punishment in our state? Would you sign the bill? Would you not sign the bill if you're the governor of North Carolina? Let me ask you this question. Go ahead and answer this for me, family. Are you in support of the death penalty, or do you oppose the death penalty? My question is, do you support the death penalty, or do you oppose the death penalty? While you are pondering that, let me go to step 2. And I'm going to wait to the top, the second half-hour segment to talk about the city of Rocky Mount. Let me go to the second thing, y'all. Everything that I am reading, everyone that I'm talking to seems to be convinced that we are going to have a government shutdown. How do you feel about that? And so it's midnight tomorrow, right? So first of all, let me just say this. I've been watching, listening, and reading, right? In the midst of my watching, listening, and reading, I saw a post today by J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States. In that post, J.D. Vance basically says Democrats want to shut the government down. Let's go ahead and speak to that demon and that spirit. This is what I want you to see about this. The Republican Party controls the U.S. Senate. The Republican Party controls the United States House of Representatives. And the Republican Party controls the White House. And so everybody that's in leadership is a Republican. It's not on Democrats if you can't pass a bill. You can't pass a budget. We're dealing with the same thing in North Carolina, right? The reason they don't pass budgets is because they don't know how to govern. They don't get along. They're going to fight with each other. They don't have a clear policy agenda for a budget in the country. So can we just think about this from a logical lens? If you, your wife, and one of your children, the three of you together cook dinner. For me, that represents the state house, the Senate, and the presidency. 3 of y'all cooked dinner, and it burned badly. Y'all burned it all up, but the 3 of you were in the kitchen. How can you blame someone not in the kitchen for burning dinner? So when people give you these little sound bites around the Democrats are shutting the government down, such is not the case. So let's talk about why we're facing a government shutdown. Now, they want what they're calling a clean, Republicans, that is 7-week funding bill. Those are called CRs. You'll hear a conversation about these continuing resolutions. I'm personally not a fan of them. I think we need to sit down and just pass a balanced budget. And I really believe that. Like, I probably need to do a whole show. Remind me, family. I'll do a whole show just on the budget deficit. Like, I'm blown away by how much money is being spent. Trump ran up the budget more. If you go through all of the last 20 years of U.S. presidents, if you look at like a 20-year stretch, Democrats and Republicans, and you just do the data dump, what you'll discover is that the federal budget always increases. The federal deficit, rather, always increases under presidential administrations to a higher extent than Democratic administrations. Now, all of them have room for improvement. Let's be honest. But Republicans are the ones. So when they talk about this, I'm just a conservative and fiscal control and fiscal conservatism, there's no evidence to prove that's what they do. And so they want to pass this clean, what they call 7-week funding bill, continuing resolutions. The Democrats are demand any package include extensions of Enhanced Affordable Care Act premium subsidies. So the whole fight is really about health care for a lot of Americans, millions of Americans. Because what they're going to do with this clean 7-week, and this is why Republicans are like, we can't get on board with this. It literally strips people out of their Affordable Care Act. And Republicans have been trying to kill the Affordable Care Act only because, let me tell you, if it was a Republican that tried to get millions of people health care, they would not be trying to kill it. It's only because that's why they call it Obamacare. And so a lot of things are going to happen. So let's be logical, people. For the ease of the numbers, okay? I don't want to be deep with this because I think when we're deep with it, it goes over people's heads and they don't really understand. Let's just say you have 1 million people on the Affordable Care Act, on government insurance, and you have 1 million people on Blue Cross and Blue Shield insurance. I have Blue Cross and Blue Shield. Not shouting them out because I think the premiums are way too high. I think they're always looking for ways not to pay the bills. And, so I have Blue Cross issues. But anyway, that's a separate segment. So let's say you have 1 million people on Blue Cross, 1 million people on government insurance, right, Medicaid. And the 1 million people that are on the government Affordable Care Act get stripped off of it. Now, listen to me. Those 1 million people still have to go to a doctor. So where are they going to go? They're going to go to the emergency room. When they go to the emergency room, the hospital is going to have to find a way. They can't subsidize all that care. They've got to pass cost along. When they pass cost along, how are they going to get the money? They're going to get the money from those of us with insurance. So now, instead of billing my provider X number of dollars to get blood drawn, it's going to be X number of dollars plus 2%. Well, when Blue Cross looks at it, they're going to be like, well, look, I'm not paying extra 2% on blood. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to then increase my premium. So the next year when I apply to get medical insurance for the church or whatever the employer is, it's going to be passed along. And those of us who have private insurance are going to pay the cost of the government stripping people off of the public insurance. So we have to recognize that, and I was thinking about this recently, y'all, like we have to do a better job of building bigger tables. It's been something that's really been in my heart. We have to stop viewing public policy from a pie perspective, and we have to view it from a table perspective. And we have to view it from the lens that we need to keep building the table so everybody can get a seat at the table. And that doesn't strip anything from white people. It doesn't strip anything from men. It doesn't strip anything from anyone when I also have room at the table for women, when I also have room at the table for African Americans, when I also have room at the table for Hispanics, right? Let's just keep building a table so we all get to sit at it. So I have, from a public policy lens of this issue, the bottom line is this. It's malpractice at the government level. Their job, their number, we ever hear people talk about, you had one job. They had one job. Well, in a very real way, the single most important thing that can happen in the North Carolina General Assembly or in the U.S. House of Representatives is the Appropriations Bill, the Appropriations Act, the Budget Bill. It is the most important because without budgets, you don't have other programs, right? So all of this trickles down into all the government, health and human services, education, transportation, housing, commerce. Everybody needs a budget. So your number one job when you get there is to pass a budget. The fact that they can't do that, won't do that, I think this is what I believe. Tell me if y'all agree or disagree. I think we should have a constitutional amendment, and I think we need to have an amendment to the North Carolina Constitution that says any elected official who serves in the state house or who serves in the U.S. Representatives, and the term that they serve, they do not succeed in passing a budget, then that elected official is ineligible for reelection. It needs to, because think about it, we just recently did new job descriptions for my senior staff, and now we're doing them for the rest of the organization. Did it for myself as well. Like I have a basic job description as senior pastor of the church, but I like have done like an embellished one, like a major one. And in the job description, it has core responsibilities, right? And then under the core responsibilities, it has like 5-6 major things it does. And then within those 5 or 6 major things, it tells you the percentage of your time that you do that. And so like preaching and teaching, like that else element is like 30% for me, because like you have to write a sermon. That's what people don't realize. Pastoral ministry is, when I throw this in for free, pastoral ministry is one of those few occupations that you have to work in order to work. So like in order for your pastor to stand in front of you and preach, he or she has to have worked in their office to write the sermon. So their work does not begin when they're in front of you. They had to work in order to work in front of you. And so my point is, if 30% of my job is something, another 25% is pastoral care, another 20%, 25% is community engagement, whatever it is, right? Vision casting, leadership development, leadership training. If we have something similar, the reason I say they should be ineligible for reelection is because a big percentage of your job is to produce a budget. And your inability to do that, in my opinion, means that you are not meeting the criteria of the highest expectation we have of you, which means you're not doing your job. And if you're not doing your job, you should not have your job next term. There needs to be something that holds people accountable. And listen, even though we don't have a constitutional amendment, you could make up in your mind, like, you know what? And this is not the fault of the Democrats, unfortunately. And I know I am a Democrat, and I'm not saying that because I am a Democrat. I'm saying it because the Republican Party is in control, and they can do something different. And so the Trump's administration approach of slashing Medicaid to pay for tax cuts and then use shutdown threats to avoid healthcare responsibilities is just fiscally irresponsible. I think it's morally bankrupt. And I think good policy requires continuity of essential services while we also debate improvements. And we should not be holding citizens hostage. The other part of this, family, is, what does a government shutdown mean for our communities? I'm very nervous about our community. I just had a conversation with another pastor about this. Rocky Mount Engine Plant recently had layoffs. Pfizer is recently having layoffs, and there will probably be more, I suspect. The city of Rocky Mount just announced a 10% slash of full-time and a 50% slash of part-time or seasonal employees. And then now we got the federal government that could potentially shut down. And so it's going to rain. Can I just encourage y'all, save your money, squirrel some away. You just never know when things are going to change financially and economically. Let me say something on the faith side about, for those of you just tuning in, I'm talking about the potential federal government shutdown. It's really all about healthcare in a very real way. I predict, and we'll see next Monday when I get on the show, I predict there will be a government shutdown. I predict there will be. I think that's unfortunate for our federal employees and our people. I mean, we have people right now. There's a, we got federal employees that are connected to our city and our state, and I worry for them. Fundamentally, this is where I struggle on the faith side. You were sick, and you visited me. I was sick, and you cared for me. Just in North Carolina alone, we could see some 38,000 people that live in our state with premium increases by hundreds of dollars a year. And people are going to have to choose between medications and groceries. And, you know, I'm so grateful that when I read the Bible, the Good Samaritan didn't have to negotiate terms before he got help, right? Because healthcare isn't a commodity, family. I think it is a moral imperative. And when our federal government is stripping healthcare from people from a faith lens, I think that is morally unacceptable. At a bare minimum, people should have the right to be healthy, just at a bare minimum. Let me give you a leadership perspective on this issue of the potential government shutdown. And that is, I like Hakeem Jeffries. I may have some concerns about Hakeem, but I like Hakeem Jeffries. I appreciate, this is what leadership looks like. A stand up, say it with your chest. We have to learn to say things with our chests. And he says, we will not support a partisan spending bill that will gut healthcare. Period. If you bring me something that's gutting healthcare, I'm a no. I like that kind of full throttle, hey, this is where I'm at with stuff. I think that's the kind of principled leadership that we need. If you contrast that with Republican leadership, Republicans who campaign on healthcare but govern to restrict it. So real leaders, I think, find solutions that serve people. Real leaders don't operate from a lens of who are my political donors and those are the only people I'm going to take care of. And so that's my leadership lens, public policy lens, and faith lens on the whole healthcare issue. Let me shift gears, and what I don't want to do, because I want to talk about what's going on in the city of Rocky Mount. I will say this. I won't get into that right now. I do want to lift up Ebenezer Baptist Church and the family of Reverend Dr. Thomas Walker. He was funeralized on Saturday. And really shout out the community choir. We named that community choir the Walker Community Singers. Wonderful group of people came together to celebrate him. Some controversy around some of the things that happened. I'm not going to get into those details. That's not my business. What I will simply say, though, just because I'm a pastor, have a will, y'all. Make your desires and your wishes clearly known. Write it down so everybody in the family can read it, see it, appreciate it. I can't tell you as senior pastor how many times I see things get put in a controversial way when there's a lack of a will. And so I just want to encourage you to have a will, have some insurance. Be clear about your wishes. Be clear about what you want. Be clear about who you want on program. Be clear about the role of the family. Be clear about next steps, because funerals can have a way of really dividing families, even though we are told in Scripture that the prayer of the book of Revelation is to strengthen what remains. So I'm gonna leave that there. We discovered this since the last show that there's a real financial, I think, meltdown. I think there's legitimate crisis in the city of Rocky Mount financially. It certainly concerns me. I pastor in the city of Rocky Mount. My church is located there. And it seems as if I'm reading the reports, and let me just be clear, if I'm reading reports correctly. So please, if you know more than I know, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm always willing to say I wasn't right about something. But the city's been spending evidently $3 to $4 million monthly over like a 2-year window. And as a result of that, their cash reserves have depleted from something like I think it was really $116 million. But I'll say from $110 million to about $20 million. This is tough. When you talk about cash reserves, again, I run a very small, business from a comparative perspective from what we're talking about. Word Tabernacle was somewhere in a $4.5 to $5 million operating budget every year. But every Tuesday, mid to late afternoon, or noontime, something like that. Every Tuesday, I literally get an email telling me what cash is on hand. Like I see, the accounts we have and how much money are within each major account. And the reason is because, man, if you have a lot of departments spending at the same time and you don't have one principal person that's responsible for looking at the cash, that's all they're doing is looking at the cash. Because budget directors and directors of departments that have budgets, all they know is I've been given a certain budget to spend. Now, and I'm speaking generally when I share this, okay? So let's just say hypothetically in our youth ministry, we say, okay, you have $250,000 to spend this year. Well, first of all, that $250,000 is predicated upon income because I have an income budget to offset my expense budget. So let's just say income comes in slow. And then let's just say, for the ease of math, we're trending 10% below income levels. Well, if I'm trending 10% below income levels, then that youth ministry doesn't have $250,000 to spend. They have 10% less than that. So 10% of $250,000 is $25,000. So you don't really have $250,000. You really have $225,000 to spend, right? That's number one. So the reason that matters is because if you have multiple people all spending at the same time and no one person looking at what percentage of income are we at year to date, then what can happen is folk can really start, that money you'd be amazed how fast. One thing I've learned, that money comes in a whole lot slower than it goes out. The other part of the budgeting process is understanding how does my money come in? So like if I'm the city of Rocky Mount, I'm sure a ton of money comes in January, I would think. Property tax, like I'm thinking about myself, when I get something, my property tax is escrowed and, they're going to release that escrow probably somewhere the end of the fourth quarter for me. And then I get a separate city tax. I pay county property tax. I pay, in the city of Rocky Mount, and I also pay in the county. And so my county taxes are escrowed. My city of Rocky Mount taxes, I'd write the check in January and I have a date. So they're probably getting a lot of money in then, right? So those are things that people have to be paying attention to in an organization. I don't know. I can't speak to why that didn't happen or why it appears that it didn't happen. I hate it for everyone that's elected in Rocky Mount. I hate it for the residents of our community, of which I am one. There is, from what I have seen and what I have read, two of the council members, Andre Knight, Ruben Blackwell, raised concerns in 2023. There was concerns about the former city manager, Keith Rogers. I like Keith as a person. I consider him a friend. I don't know of the inner workings. This is what I will tell you. And again, I'm only giving you the way I'm thinking about the budget crisis. What I will tell you is that he's been gone for a year. And I've had people I've had to fire or had to let go or have a change of staff. What I have found is that sometimes when I'm letting people go because they just didn't work out in a position, I'm oftentimes having to go back and revisit some of the decisions they made because I'm probably releasing them because of decisions they made. So when I release them, I'm also having to make adjustments for what they did. I don't know that there's been adjustments for things that he did that maybe they weren't in agreement with. So there's a lot of discussion about that. I just know from my own management style, I'm taking a look at those decisions and I'm trying to rewind some of that. I don't see the value of the forensic audit personally. I just explained to you how cash can drop off. If you have multiple departments spending, that cash can be gone so fast. So if my debt service is really increasing, if capital stuff is increasing, we just bought a fleet of vehicles at the church. Fortunately, we had income that hit while the expense was going out, so we didn't really feel it, but we could have felt it. And And my staff will tell you there are times where I'm sending out an email like, moratorium on spending. We're not spending any money right now. I need time to build my reserves back up because it's going to rain one day. And so I personally, like, I am not of the opinion where I see where I don't think there's any warrant for criminal investigation. I don't feel like there's any need for a forensic audit. I just don't see that. It just sounds like it were people asleep at the wheel, and it sounds like it were people that weren't really paying attention, and now we're in a situation. Like, I know, and we had at the end of 24 at Word Tabernacle Church, we had cash reserves. We always have cash reserves. We had cash reserves, and we spent off of those cash reserves for some improvements we were trying to do, which means we ended fiscal year 2024 at the church with a negative net income, meaning we technically lost money. Well, I heard about it at business meetings. So when we presented the year-end financials, people were like, hey, Pastor, hold up. Why did we lose money in 2024? And I explained to them, of which they did not like, right? I had to own it because I'm the pastor. And I can't blame Shavonda. I can't blame Kyle and Stephanie. I can't blame department heads. Like, at the end of the day, I'm the guy, and I got to take the hit for it. And so I do think there's an element of leadership that just has to say, hey, we didn't mismanage it. We deliberately made some investments. It's not our practice moving forward, and et cetera. And then our members, we just had a business meeting. They immediately saw kind of the change in our numbers, and our cash on hand has gone up year over year and not down. And so the trend line on the cash on hand for the city has really gone down. I do think that it points to the need for professional financial management. I mean, when you've got the kind of money that Rocky Mount has, I want to say, where did I get the number 22 from? I feel like Rocky Mount's like 22nd biggest city, but I could be wrong. So, I think that given the size of the city, you have to have trained financial people. That financial stuff drives me crazy. What's depreciation, assets? It's just, it makes my head hurt. The reason I say that is because, if I'm sitting on city council, I'm really not trained to know that. I will say that, if you work for me and I ask you for information and you just don't give me what I asked for, then I'm firing you. And so I don't fully understand that issue of a person's working for the city council, something gets asked, he refuses to provide it, and he still has a job. Like, I don't get that. That could also be some of the political dynamics, though, right? Because, if you work at Word, you work directly for me. That's one person. Technically, at the council level, you work for 7 people, right? Because you have 7 people on the city council. What I will say to people is, like, pump the brakes and don't be so quick to talk about stuff you don't know about. I can tell you that stuff like this is highly complex. And I saw people weighing in with things, for example, like the roundabouts. And, well, we shouldn't have built so many roundabouts. Well, the city wasn't building roundabouts, right? The Department of Transportation was doing that. So people are weighing in on things about this. And what I will say is just give it a moment. I do think we have to, it's a sucker punch. I think it's going to be a little worse before it gets better, in my opinion. And we're going to have to be good community for the people that get laid off. We're going to have to be good community for the people that relied on this as part-time income. And hopefully we can use it as a learning, and we can become better as a result of it. So from a policy lens, I just think that I think it's kind of it indicates that we need to run the city government more efficiently. And we need to make sure we're running the city government with people that are in roles really knowing what they're doing. I think we need to run the city government in a way where we're paying people parity for a city our size and for our income levels to justify. So I think we may have a situation where some people, their salaries are going to have to get scaled back a little bit. from a faith lens, what I will say is we do have a responsibility to, we've been given a responsibility to entrust, we've been entrusted with responsibility to care for people. And I'm like, I teach this to my staff. I fundamentally believe I want Rocky Mount to grow. Like, I'm not one of them guys bad mouthing Rocky Mount. It would be stupid for me to do that. I pastor in Rocky Mount. I live in Rocky Mount. And I actually love Rocky Mount in Eastern North Carolina. But I am a biblicist. And I'm clear about the scriptures that teach us to whom much is given, much is required. And I'm also clear about the scriptures of how can I be trusted with little? How can I, if I can't be trusted with little, then how can God give me much? So I do get concerned from a release of resources that only God can release as he looks at us as a community, saying, I can't really trust you with a lot more because you haven't shown good stewardship of what you do have. And so I'm hoping that we can figure this out. I hope we can get this right. But just be careful. Don't be, it's a meeting going on right now, as a matter of fact, or about to be. And so I probably won't catch that meeting, but be kind. You know, I'll be honest. Like, I've never considered running for city council, but I have considered running for mayor. Won't ever do it. And the number one reason, because I don't believe in destroying, like, my bread and butter, the principal thing I do is pastor Word Tabernacle Church. And so I never make decisions that are going to be detrimental to Word Tabernacle Church. And when I have sat in on city council meetings or listened to them online, and I have watched the way the community just gets up in there and disrespects, and I get passion, I get people sharing their heart. You know, I would not be cut from the cloth of allowing that level of disrespect, and I would be holding the meeting firm, and I would really be not allowing people to be disrespectful like that. And it would only probably serve to have people dislike me, and it will probably have a negative impact on my church. When I was in the General Assembly, you can sit up in the gallery, but you can't come in front of us and say anything. And so, and I do think there's environments by which people can and should be able to do that, but I do think sometimes the way we see it communicated at the general meetings is a lot for me. And so, you know, that's kind of where I am on a public policy lens. I do think that I struggle a little bit with working families that are already struggling to pay more monthly utilities. You know, we're already paying a lot in utilities. I want to say I heard a press conference with the mayor. If I understood this correctly, I think what I heard him say is the city had never passed on the true cost for the utilities to the resident, that they had passed on the true cost of the utilities to businesses, but not to the resident. And so now what they're charging is going to represent the true cost of doing business. And so, and that may very well be the case. If I'm crafting the city budget, I'm wondering, can we afford to subsidize some of this cost, or is the budget so tight that we need to pass this cost along for the consumer for what they're really paying for it? So, so I feel for this. I think there's some people whose money is tight, and $20, $25 a month, whatever, of increase, I think is going to be really difficult. And so there's some red flags for me with this. You know, I think it's when Andre Knight and Ruben Blackwell raised the red flags, I don't know that they got responded to in an appropriate way. And maybe we would not quite be here had that not happened. And, you know, so I'm hoping that, I think there's a team. We need a great team on city council. Like I want to encourage all 7 members of the city council and the mayor just to work well together. So I don't know how well people would respond to me as pastor of Word Tabernacle if it was perceived by the church that the house was falling apart, and I literally would stand up in front of them and say, y'all, I had no idea the house was falling apart. I don't know how much the people would still trust my leadership. And so I do think that we have assumed within our leadership functions and responsibilities a requirement to know what's going on. And so that's my take on what's going on in the city of Rocky Mount, praying, and I'm just believing that good is going to come out of this. I don't like, just some of the negativity. I have a hard time reading it on social media. Being elected office is difficult. And if you don't believe me, you try it. It is really, really difficult. And it's particularly difficult when so much is being tainted about race. And I really wish we would rise above that. So that's my take on City of Rocky Mount. Curious to see what y'all think about it and kind of where people are weighing in. I want to just do one more segment, and then I'm going to get to a political event myself. Michigan church shooting, house of worship houses under attack again. Let me ask y'all a question. Let me just tell you, multiple people shot at a Mormon church in Grand Blanc, Michigan. 4 confirmed dead, including the shooter who was killed by the police. From a political policy lens, we have to be tired of seeing people gunning people down. We have to know that this is not about second rights. It is not about that, y'all. We running around with these weapons and it's craziness. And so I really struggle with this because this is so far. Last one was a Mormon. We've had Black Baptists. We've had Jewish people. This is not, my mother used to say a bullet doesn't have a name on it, right? And so this is an outright assault on sacred space. This is when people are communing with their God, however they see God, they should feel safe. So for me, this is not about denominational differences. I think this is fundamentally about protecting our fundamental right to gather in worship. And so I hope, regardless of our faith traditions, we'll stand together in this. Because for me, an attack on one house of worship is an attack on all. How do you feel about going through a metal detector to go into your church? How would you feel about going through a metal detector when you were going to a funeral? How would you feel? I'm not talking about being wind down. I'm talking about just they're there, they're upright, and you just walk through and they went off or didn't go off, and they would pull you aside accordingly. We do it in schools. We do it in other large gatherings, and yet we don't do it in churches, which tends to be amongst our larger gatherings. I'm curious. Can I survey y'all? What do you think about that? So that's my struggle on the faith side. On the political policy side, the public policy side, I think the violence that we're seeing, the targeted violence against faith communities, I think should be alarming for us. I think that we need to be serious about federal hate crime legislation. We need to enforce it. I think the federal government should make available grant opportunities for houses of worship to be able to enhance their security. This is going to be a very expensive proposition for churches and synagogues and mosques. And I think there needs to be a federal program designed at keeping our houses of worship safe. The reason I think it's the federal government's responsibility is because we're supposed to be able to worship freely in our nation. And right now, we cannot worship freely in our nation. And so I also think from a public policy perspective, we need gun violence prevention measures. And we also need to make sure houses of worship shouldn't need to become fortresses, but we can't ignore the reality of rising religious violence. And so, I think there's some work that we need to do. I think from a leadership perspective, I think as faith leaders, we're just going to have to be honest and say, look, I want to keep people in my church safe, and I'm going to have armed people. I'm going to have security detail. I'm going to have uniformed police officers. All of this is additional cost to the church, to the synagogue, or to the mosque. But I think it's really important that we do something. We have to do more than just our prayers are with you. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. Faith without works is dead, y'all. And at some point, it is called praying amiss. And so we need policy that can match our praying. And I just want to lift that up before you. So, hey, listen, this is James Gailliard. You've been watching, listening to Until All Thrive. I just covered some holistic stories today. Wanted to get your lens on things, about some things going on, talk a little bit about the city of Rocky Mount, a little bit about the crime bill in North Carolina, a little bit about the possibility of a government shutdown, and a little bit about the most recent church shooting. And so I'm going to leave it there. Look, I hope y'all have an amazing week. I'm going to listen and watch all your feedback. I asked a question at the top of the show. Please follow me on YouTube, because eventually I will not be pushing this out on Facebook. I want to focus my channel on YouTube. My question at the top of the show was, would you use a call-in function if I offered it? If I offered the opportunity for you to call in and talk to me and share your thoughts, is that something you would take advantage of? And so, again, I'm James Gailliard. You've been watching or listening to Until All Thrive. I look forward to being back with you next week on the show. Give me some ideas on what you might want me to talk about, and I can't wait to be back with you
Legislate love,
next
but we
week.
can name hate. Can't fix what you won't face at the gate.